Pre-Islamic Iran, a hotspot of trade and Silk Road caravans, but also home to what is considered to be the precursor to the Abrahamic monotheism idea. I speak, of course, of one of the world's oldest religions, which itself predates Judaism. That is to say, we are going to be talking about the Zoroastrian religion, named after its founder, Zoroaster, or Zarathustra, as he is often called. What I'd like to cover in this video is, what does Zoroastrianism believe in? How is it applied to Persian imperial governance? And why was it defeated by Islamicization? And much of our understanding of the Avesta, or the holy book of the Zoroastrians, was changed over a course of a millennia, when it was still the state-sanctioned religious scripture. We can theorize that Zoroaster was born somewhere in northeast Iran between 1500 and 1000 BCE. The core beliefs that he preached and professed in his lifetime were thus: the belief in a supreme god, or Ahura Mazda, as the name is said to be. Ahura Mazda itself means wise lord. They, or he, we don't really know which gender they ascribed the supreme god to be, but said wise lord is the sole, uncreated, all-good deity, and the creator of the concept of truth, or Asha, and also order, as well as the cosmos. Now, this is where we get into the differentiation between Zoroastrianism and classical Judaism. Zoroastrianism ascribes that there is a moral dualism in the cosmos. There is Asha, which is truth, and then there is Druj, which is lying, chaos, deception, and evil is personified as Angra Mainyu, or Ahriman, who opposes Ahura Mazda. This is their sort of satanic entity, but it is still at an equal level to Ahura Mazda. That being said, they are not truly equal, as Angra Mainyu ultimately is defeated by Ahura Mazda. And this is where we can say that the concepts of good and evil originated. Now, in Zoroastrianism, humans are morally responsible agents. They will be judged in the life to come for their own deeds and actions and words and thoughts in this life that they inhabit. Every person must choose between truth and falsehood. Moral life is summarized as thus: good thoughts, good words, good deeds. Simple. Well, here's where it gets a little bit more complicated. The eschatology, or the end-time beliefs of Zoroastrians, strongly influenced later Abrahamic ideas, meaning judgment after death, heaven and hell, resurrection of the dead, and the final renovation of the world, or in the ancient language, Prashakarati. This means the ultimate defeat of evil. Now, the sacred elements of Zoroastrianism is somewhat widely known. Fire symbolizes the truth and divine wisdom, but it is not itself worshipped or made an idol of. There are purity laws in this faith, which are inherently tied to an expression of moral integrity. Now, the Avesta is the holy book, but the Gathas, or the poetic hymns ascribed to Zarathustra, could be seen as more of the gospel aspect of the Avesta for Zoroastrians, if we can equate it to any sort of Christian understanding, which we should be careful to do, because it would not be accurate to say that these are in fact the Zoroastrian equivalent to the Gospels. The Psalms are another way of equating the Gathas in Zoroastrianism. But Zoroastrianism was not just a religion, it was a state ideology, deeply entwined in the Persian imperialist way of life. Kingship was a moral trust. Persian rulers governed under the concept of kavarena, meaning divine glory. The king ruled by divine favor, not divine status. Losing moral legitimacy meant losing the right to rule. a bad king lost to Hormazda's favor, and rebellion, in this case, could be morally justified. There is law, truth, and administration. The Persian governance emphasized justice over tyranny, and truthfulness in administration. So bureaucracy had to be morally integral, and law was seen as moral mandate, not arbitrary power. This made Persian rule relatively tolerant compared to its contemporary systems. And this is mentioned in the Bible, that Cyrus the Great, a historically proven Zoroastrian, rebuilt the temple in Jerusalem for the Israelites when they returned. So other rulers that were seen as good, morally upright, even by biblical standards, include Cyrus the Great, Darius, and Xerxes. There were no forced conversions under their rules. There were local customs and religions that were respected, and as I mentioned before, Cyrus the Great allowed Jews to return from Babylon. This tolerance does follow Zoroastrian ethics. Coercion was seen as aligning with Druge. Now, the Zoroastrian ethics supported a professional bureaucracy. This included honest and measured taxation, infrastructure, and including roads and irrigation, but also bureaucrats were held accountable. The empire itself was framed as a mirror of the cosmic order. Later, under the Sasanian Empire, Zoroastrianism became more centralized and institutional, clergy gained more political power, and there was less tolerance than earlier periods. Religious orthodoxy became sometimes more enforced. We're talking 224 to 651 of the Common Era. This just gets before the Islamicization of Persia. This rigidity did weaken the system ultimately. Now, how were Zoroastrians defeated by Islamicization? It was not overnight, and it was for several centuries, as a matter of fact. There was the military defeat in the 7th century that the Sasanian Empire suffered. The Arab-Muslim conquests in 633 to 651 CE meant a decisive defeat. All battles like Al-Qadsidiyah, the fall of Ctesiphon, the Sasanian capital. Once the state collapsed, the religion lost all political protection and legitimacy, and thus Persia fell into dhimmi status and jizya tax. Under Islamic rule, Zoroastrians were classified as people of the book, but mostly reluctantly so, which allowed them to practice their religion, but under the condition of jizya tax, and that they were also barred from certain offices, and they were economically disadvantaged. This was coercion to convert to Islam. Over generations, conversion became economically and socially necessary and without other option. So Islamicization was mostly gradual, though there was very much extortion to it inherently, which is the characteristic of Islamic conversion throughout history. Zoroastrians relied on temple networks, trained priesthoods, royal patronage, and the fire temples declined, clergy lost influence, and oral traditions weakened. This is why I say that the Avesta is not very reliable in order to understand Zoroastrianism in its historic wholeness. Persian culture did survive, but it was completely Islamicized. Zoroastrian texts were preserved by small communities, but not the state. Now, many of them did flee to India, becoming the Parsis. And, to any music fans out there, Freddie Mercury's family were Indian immigrants, which came from this community in India. They were Zoroastrians. And today it remains a small but influential community culturally in India. The lesson you could say from Zoroastrians is that once you become a powerful empire and you become suspicious of its weakening political powers, you lose control and confidence, and a much stronger force that isn't kidding around will eventually defeat you in a very humiliating fashion. That's all I have to say about Zoroastrianism today. I'm Jack Existential. I hope you probably learned something.